Did you know Route 66 doesn't officially exist anymore? It was erased from the U.S. highway system in 1985. Yet somehow it became the most famous road in America. From Dust Bowl families fleeing west to neon diners and wigwam motels, Route 66 turned into a legend. Tonight, we'll explore the entire story of the Mother Road. Before you settle in, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this kind of quiet storytelling truly helps you relax and unwind. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. I really enjoy reading what you write, and it's comforting to see people from all around the world gathering here, slowly winding down side by side, even though we're far apart. Make yourself comfortable and let the room grow quiet. If you like, turn on a fan or a bit of white noise for a steady background hum. With each breath, let your body soften and your thoughts slow. Close your eyes, relax, and together we'll begin tonight's story at a calm and gentle pace. Chapter 1: The Dream of a Road Across America. In the early decades of the 20th century, the United States was changing faster than most people could keep up with. Cities were expanding, factories were humming, and the automobile was no longer just a curiosity for the wealthy. By the 1920s, cars were becoming a part of ordinary life, and with them came a new desire: the freedom to travel long distances on smooth, dependable roads. But America's roads at that time were anything but dependable. Most were patchworks of local paths, dirt trails, or uneven gravel routes that turned into mud after the rain. Travelers often found themselves lost in unfamiliar towns or stranded because the road they needed simply didn't connect to the next one. The dream of a continuous highway across the heart of the nation was more than a convenience. It was a vision of progress, of unity, and of possibility. One man in particular believed in that vision more than anyone else. His name was Cyrus Avery, a businessman and civic leader from Oklahoma. Avery saw firsthand how limited travel kept communities isolated, and how better roads could bring opportunity, commerce, and connection. He began to push for a federal highway system that would not just link nearby towns, but stretch across states, binding the country together. It wasn't an easy dream to sell. Many officials doubted the need for such an ambitious project. After all, railroads were still the backbone of American travel and trade. Why pour money into long ribbons of pavement when trains already carried passengers and freight from coast to coast? Avery, however, believed the car had changed everything. Trains followed fixed routes and fixed schedules, but a car gave freedom to the individual. Anyone could get behind the wheel and set off whenever they wished. What was missing was a network of roads to make those journeys safe, simple, and direct. As the 1920s rolled on, momentum began to build. The Good Roads movement, which had started as a push by bicyclists decades earlier, now found powerful allies in automobile clubs and business leaders. Farmers wanted better roads to get crops to market. Families wanted the chance to travel without endless detours, and cities wanted the commerce that a major road would bring. The dream of a great highway stretching from Chicago in the Midwest down through the small towns of Oklahoma and Texas, across the deserts of New Mexico, Mexico, and Arizona, and finally to the shining promise of Los Angeles, began to take shape. This was not just about building a road. It was about stitching together the story of America itself. From the industrial centers of the Great Lakes to the Golden Coast of California. To understand why this mattered so much, you can imagine life in those years. A family in Illinois might dream of moving west to escape the cold winters, but the journey was grueling. Each state had its own system of road markings, often confusing or inconsistent. Maps were unreliable, and travelers sometimes had to ask directions at every crossroads. With a single designated highway running across the country, all of that confusion could fade away. You could set out from Chicago, keep following the same road, and know that it would take you all the way to California. Cyrus Avery became known as the father of Route 66, but at this stage it was still an idea, waiting for the federal government to adopt a standardized system. In 1925, the groundwork was laid with a plan to create numbered highways across the United States. Odd numbers would run north to south, and even numbers east to west. Avery lobbied hard for his proposed route to be included, arguing that it would pass through regions that had long been overlooked by the railroads, bringing prosperity to places that had been left behind. When the numbering decisions were being made, Avery had hoped for the number 60, a strong, round figure he thought would stand out on the maps. But political wrangling gave that number to another route, and his proposed highway was instead assigned the number 66. Avery was disappointed at first, but the number soon revealed its own magic. 66 rolled easily off the tongue. It was simple, rhythmic, and unforgettable. Fate had given the road a name that would someday echo in songs, stories, and legends. By 1926, the dream of a road across America was finally official. U.S. Highway 66 was designated as part of the new federal highway system. Signs began to go up, marking a path from Chicago to Santa Monica. Though much of the road was still gravel or dirt in those early years, the idea had come alive. People now had a highway they could follow westward, through the rolling farmlands of the Midwest, down into the prairies, across the wide-open desert landscapes, and onward to the Pacific Ocean. At the heart of this new road was more than concrete and paint. It carried the hopes of millions of Americans who longed for opportunity, adventure, and a better life. Route 66 was still just beginning, but already it promised something extraordinary. A way to see America not as separate regions, but as one continuous journey. As night settled over the small towns along its path, street lamps cast light on the freshly marked signs. Travelers, tired from bumpy roads, could now look ahead and know that they were on the right track. The dream of a road across America was no longer just a dream. It was a reality that would change the way people thought about travel, freedom, and the open road itself. And so, Route 66 was born. Not as a legend yet, but as a promise. A promise that the road west was open, that journeys could be shared, and that every mile carried the whisper of possibility. Chapter 2: Birth of Route 66 in 1926. The year was 1926, and the United States was buzzing with change. Jazz filled the airwaves, skyscrapers rose in growing cities, and automobiles filled the streets in numbers that would have been unimaginable just a generation earlier. Roads were no longer just paths to the next town. They were becoming the veins of a modern nation, carrying people, goods, and ideas farther and faster than ever before. Against this backdrop, the federal government unveiled a plan to organize America's patchwork of roads into a national system of numbered highways. This was more than a bureaucratic decision. It was the birth of a new way to imagine travel across the country. No longer would travelers have to rely on confusing local road names or inconsistent state markings. A simple number would guide them from one end of the journey to the other. Among the first of these new highways was US Route 66, a line on a map stretching from Chicago, Illinois to Santa Monica, California. Its total length measured just under 2,500 miles. It would pass through 8 states and hundreds of small towns, weaving together farms, prairies, deserts, and cities into one continuous story. From the very beginning, Route 66 was different. Many highways favored the fastest, straightest paths possible, designed to connect large population centers. Route 66, however, bent and curved, taking in communities that had long been left behind by railroads and big shipping routes. Cyrus Avery had insisted on this. He wanted a road that wasn't just efficient, but inclusive. A road that gave small towns a chance to grow. In his view, the highway should not bypass America, it should pass through it. In Chicago, the starting point, the road began near Grant Park on the shores of Lake Michigan. From there, it stretched westward across Illinois through farmlands and small cities. Travelers would soon discover the charm of the roadside diner, the mom-and-pop garage, and the humble motor court offering a night's rest. These businesses sprang up almost overnight, eager to serve the steady stream of motorists following the new highway signs. As the route entered Missouri, it carried travelers through rolling hills and into the growing city of St. Louis. From there, it pressed onward to Oklahoma, where Avery's vision had first taken shape. Oklahoma would become not only the geographic heart of Route 66, but also its symbolic heart. It was a land of wide skies and endless horizons, a reminder of the road's promise of freedom and possibility. Crossing into Texas, the road threaded through the Panhandle, a region defined by open ranch land and long stretches where the horizon seemed to swallow the sky. Here, travelers learned the rhythm of the open road, the steady hum of tires on pavement, the shimmering heat in summer, the sudden storms that swept across the plains. Then came New Mexico and Arizona, where Route 66 revealed landscapes that seemed almost otherworldly. Red cliffs, mesas, and desert expanses stretched for miles. Motorists from the Midwest marveled at the scenery, which was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Roadside trading posts offered souvenirs, Navajo crafts, and a glimpse into cultures that had lived in the Southwest long before the first car passed through. Finally, after miles of desert and mountain, Route 66 delivered travelers into California. The road wound through the Mojave Desert, skirted citrus groves, and eventually descended into Los Angeles. And there, at the western terminus in Santa Monica, the road met the Pacific Ocean, as if the journey had reached not just an ending, but a kind of destiny. It is important to remember that the highway in those early years was far from the smooth asphalt ribbon we might imagine today. Much of it was still gravel or dirt, prone to ruts and washouts. Paved sections were scattered, and it could take days to travel what now might be done in hours. Yet even with its challenges, Route 66 was a marvel. For the first time, Americans could look at a single number on a sign and know that it represented a road carrying them across the breadth of the continent. The designation of Route 66 in 1926 was not just a practical improvement in travel. It was a statement about America itself. It said that the nation believed in connection, in opportunity, and in the freedom of the open road. The Main Street of America, as it came to be called, welcomed travelers from every walk of life, promising that no matter who you were or where you started, you could follow this road and find a future waiting. In the years to come, Route 66 would prove that promise true, as waves of migrants, families, dreamers, and adventurers set their wheels on its pavement. The story of those travelers was only just beginning. Chapter 3: The Dust Bowl and the Road of Flight. The 1930s brought hardship to America on a scale few had ever known. The Great Depression had already stripped away jobs, savings, and stability. Then came the Dust Bowl, when years of drought and relentless winds turned the fertile farmlands of the Great Plains into dry, choking wastelands. Crops withered, livestock died, and families who had lived on the same land for generations faced the bitter truth that they could no longer survive where they were. For hundreds of thousands of these families, the answer lay west. California, with its orchards, fields, and promise of work, became a beacon of hope. But reaching it was no small task. They piled what they could onto trucks and jalopies, loaded with furniture, pots and pans, and children squeezed together in the back. Many of those desperate journeys followed a single road, Route 66. John Steinbeck captured the experience in his novel, The Grapes of Wrath, where he called Route 66 the Mother Road. His words were not an exaggeration. For migrants fleeing the Dust Bowl states of Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and Arkansas, the highway was not just pavement, it was survival. It carried them from despair to possibility, from land they could no longer till to orchards where they hoped to find work. The journey was grueling. Cars broke down under the weight of overloaded belongings. Tires burst on sharp stones. Dust clogged engines and choked passengers as mile after mile stretched ahead. Families often camped by the roadside, cooking simple meals over small fires, trying to make their meager supplies last. Yet even in these moments of exhaustion, Route 66 offered something essential: direction. In a time when so much felt uncertain, the road itself was steady, guiding them westward, mile after mile. Along the way, towns on the route saw both tragedy and opportunity. For some, the sight of ragged migrants only highlighted the depth of the depression. For others, the steady stream of travelers brought business to gas stations, grocery stores, and mechanics. Entrepreneurs along the road offered everything from cold sodas to car repairs, knowing that weary travelers would pay what little they had to keep moving forward. California was not always the paradise migrants imagined. Many found back-breaking work in the fields for low wages, competing with countless others who had also arrived with hope in their hearts. Still, for many families, simply reaching the state was a victory. They had survived the journey, and the Mother Road had carried them there. The Dust Bowl migration cemented Route 66's place in the national imagination. It was no longer just a highway. It had become a lifeline, a path of escape from desperation, and a symbol of resilience. Steinbeck's words spread its legend, but the real power of the story came from the families themselves, who endured hunger, loss, and uncertainty, yet pressed forward in search of a better life. When we think of Route 66 today, we often picture neon signs, convertibles, and cheerful road trips. But before all that, the road was soaked in the dust and sweat of migrants who had little choice but to follow its path. Their stories remain at the heart of its history. They remind us that Route 66 was not just a highway of leisure and adventure, but also a road of struggle, survival, and the hope that tomorrow could be better than today. As night fell over the campsites and roadside clearings of the 1930s, the weary families would settle into uneasy rest. The wind might rattle the canvas of a tent, or dust might sting the eyes, but the road was always waiting for them in the morning. It stretched ahead, unbroken, carrying them onward toward the promise of California. Chapter 4. The War Years. When the 1940s arrived, America found itself on the brink of transformation once again. The Great Depression had scarred the nation, but the outbreak of World War II brought both fear and a surge of purpose. Factories roared back to life. Men and women took up new roles in the workforce, and the nation prepared itself for a conflict that would span the globe. Route 66, already known as the Mother Road of Migration, now found itself serving as a lifeline of war. The same pavement that had carried families west during the Dust Bowl would now carry troops, tanks, and supplies as America mobilized for the greatest conflict in human history. Military convoys rumbled down Route 66 day and night. Trucks filled with ammunition, food, and fuel traveled westward toward training bases and ports. Soldiers, freshly enlisted, were sent to camps in the deserts of Arizona, New Mexico, and California, where they would be hardened for the battlefields overseas. For many, Route 66 was the first step on a journey that would carry them far from home, perhaps never to return. Towns along the highway quickly adapted to the new reality. Service stations stayed busy keeping convoys on the move. Cafes and diners filled with young men in uniform, some heading out to training, others returning on brief leave before shipping off to war. Small motels that had once hosted traveling families now became crowded with soldiers and their families, sharing hurried goodbyes. The road also played a role in the industrial effort. Factories sprang up in cities along the route, producing everything from aircraft parts to weapons. Workers commuted on Route 66, carpooling to plants that operated around the clock. The war effort demanded speed, and the highway delivered it. For communities that had struggled through the lean years of the 1930s, the war economy brought new jobs and money. Farmers supplied crops to feed both civilians and soldiers. Businesses thrived as steady traffic kept registers ringing. But the war also cast long shadows. News of casualties filtered back, and towns along the route mourned their sons and daughters who never returned. For soldiers traveling west, Route 66 became more than just a road. It was a memory, etched into their last days in America. They remembered the billboards flashing by, the smell of gasoline at a filling station, the taste of a quick meal at a roadside cafe. Years later, many veterans would look back on Route 66 as the road that carried them from boyhood to the unimaginable realities of war. As the war drew to a close in 1945, Route 66 had proven itself indispensable. It had carried soldiers and supplies, connected factories to shipping points, and kept the machinery of war turning. But more than that, it had carried the emotional weight of a nation in conflict. Goodbyes whispered at small-town bus stops, letters mailed from roadside post offices, and reunions celebrated in cafes along the route when the war finally ended. When peace returned, Route 66 stood ready for a new chapter. The soldiers who had once traveled it in convoys would soon return in family cars, with wives, children, and a hunger for the freedom of the open road. The war had given Route 66 a role in the nation's survival, and now it was about to give it a new role, as the highway of prosperity, leisure, and adventure in the booming post-war years. Chapter 5: The Golden Age of the American Highway. The end of World War II brought with it a wave of relief, renewal, and optimism. Soldiers returned home. The economy surged, and Americans found themselves standing on the threshold of an era of prosperity, unlike anything they had known before. Central to this new age was the automobile. Cars were no longer just tools of necessity. They became symbols of freedom, adventure, and family life. And no road captured that spirit more than Route 66. The 1950s are often remembered as the golden age of Route 66. Families piled into shiny new sedans. Children pressed their noses to the windows, and parents looked ahead with excitement as the open road stretched out before them. For the first time, ordinary families could take vacations by car, exploring the country on their own schedule. Route 66 was the highway of dreams, leading to places both ordinary and extraordinary. Along the road, entire communities flourished. Small towns learned quickly that travelers were eager for rest, food, and entertainment. Neon signs lit up the night skies, advertising motor courts, diners, and gas stations. Roadside attractions sprang up in every state, with giant statues, quirky museums, reptile farms, and trading posts designed to lure families off the highway for a few minutes of wonder. These stops were often simple, sometimes eccentric, but they added magic to the journey. The classic American diner became a hallmark of the road. Stainless steel counters, jukeboxes playing rock and roll, and waitresses pouring hot coffee created an atmosphere that felt both modern and welcoming. Motels lined with glowing neon promised air-conditioned rooms, TV, and vacancy. For many travelers, these brightly lit beacons were as exciting as the destinations themselves. Gas stations also became more than just refueling points. They were gathering places where travelers swapped stories, mechanics offered quick repairs, and locals shared directions. The gas station attendant in crisp uniform was often the first friendly face a family encountered when pulling into town. Route 66 taught America that the journey could be just as memorable as the destination. The rise of car culture also influenced popular music and film. Songs celebrating the open road filled the airwaves, none more famous than Bobby Troupe's "Get Your Kicks on Route 66." Its upbeat rhythm captured the joy of driving west, ticking off the towns and cities along the way like verses in a hymn to freedom. The song became an anthem of the highway, and its popularity ensured that the road's reputation would only grow. In this golden age, Route 66 symbolized everything new and exciting about post-war America. It was a place where people could leave behind the struggles of the Depression and the fear of the war years. Instead, they could embrace leisure, mobility, and the wide-open spaces of their country. The road carried them to new homes in the booming suburbs, to national parks for family vacations, and to the bright lights of cities they had only dreamed of visiting. Every mile seemed alive with promise. Children begged their parents to stop at roadside attractions. Mothers marveled at the convenience of motor courts, and fathers enjoyed the pride of piloting the family car across the states. The hum of tires on the pavement became the soundtrack of an era, steady and reassuring. Looking back, it is easy to see why the 1950s are remembered as the golden age of Route 66. It was a time when the road was not just a highway, but a destination in itself. The neon lights, the roadside diners, the laughter of families on vacation, all of it created a world where the ordinary became extraordinary. But as bright as those years were, change was on the horizon. Even as Route 66 shined in its prime, plans were already being laid that would challenge its reign as the main street of America. The interstate highway system was coming, and with it, the golden age of Route 66 would slowly begin to fade. Chapter 6: A Road of Myth and Music. By the 1960s, Route 66 was no longer just a highway. It had become an icon. The road that had carried Dust Bowl migrants west and fueled the post-war boom now entered the world of popular culture, forever tied to music, television, and the restless energy of a changing America. The most famous tribute came in the form of a song. In 1946, songwriter Bobby Troup penned the now legendary "Get Your Kicks" on Route 66. With its rolling rhythm and catchy lyrics, the song turned a stretch of asphalt into something poetic. It ticked off cities along the way like verses in a hymn, reminding listeners that this was not just a road, but an adventure. The song was recorded by Nat King Cole and later by countless artists, from Chuck Berry to the Rolling Stones. Each version carried with it the same message. Route 66 was more than a line on a map. It was freedom, set to music. Television soon added to the myth. In 1960, the series Route 66 debuted, following two young men as they traveled across the country in a Corvette. Each episode placed them in a new town with new characters, reflecting the diversity and struggles of America during that turbulent decade. The show captured the spirit of discovery and independence, even as it showcased the backdrop of diners, motels, and open highways that viewers associated with the road. For audiences across the nation, Route 66 was no longer something distant. It was a stage where American stories played out week after week. The road also drew the attention of the counterculture. Young people in the 1960s sought experiences beyond the suburban ideal of their parents. They piled into vans and hitchhiked westward, often following Route 66. The road represented rebellion, discovery, and the hope of finding something new at the end of the line. In the eyes of many, Route 66 had transformed from a family highway into a road of escape, carrying the restless generation toward California's beaches, deserts, and cities alive with music and protest. Artists, writers, and filmmakers also embraced the imagery of the road. The neon signs, the endless desert stretches, the quirky roadside attractions, all became shorthand for a uniquely American sense of freedom. The road was both real and symbolic. It was the promise of possibility and the reflection of a nation caught between tradition and change. Yet even as Route 66 gained a mythical glow, the seeds of its decline were already being sown. Construction of the new interstate highway system had begun, and mile by mile, sleek four-lane roads started to bypass the small towns that had thrived on Route 66 traffic. Families that once stopped at mom-and-pop motels now sped past on faster roads, unaware of the communities they no longer entered. For now, though, the legend was stronger than the loss. The song, the show, and the culture of the 1960s ensured that Route 66 would live forever in memory. Even as it faced an uncertain future, it was firmly embedded in America's imagination. People could close their eyes, hum the tune of "Get Your Kicks," and picture themselves cruising beneath neon lights, the wind in their hair, the horizon glowing with promise. The road of myth and music had been born, and though its days as the dominant highway were numbered, its place in the American story was already secure. Chapter 7: The Decline of the Mother Road. By the 1970s, the golden glow of Route 66 was beginning to fade. What had once been the main street of America was now under pressure from a new system of roads, built not for charm or discovery, but for speed and efficiency. The Interstate Highway System, launched in the 1950s under President Dwight D. Eisenhower, was steadily spreading across the country. These new superhighways offered wider lanes, smoother pavement, and faster travel. Families and truckers who once relied on Route 66 now found themselves drawn to these modern expressways. For the small towns that had flourished along the Mother Road, the change was devastating. When the new interstates bypassed their main streets, traffic dwindled. Motels that once buzzed with travelers grew quiet. Diners and gas stations saw fewer cars pulling in, their neon lights flickering over empty parking lots. Some towns dried up almost overnight, their economies tied too closely to the steady flow of travelers who no longer came. For those who did remain on Route 66, the drive was no longer what it had been. Potholes appeared, pavement cracked, and services grew sparse. The road that had once symbolized freedom began to feel neglected, overshadowed by the smooth new highways cutting across the land. The official end came in 1985, when Route 66 was formally decommissioned as part of the U.S. highway system. After nearly 60 years, the road that had carried millions of travelers was no longer recognized as a national highway. For many Americans, it felt like the closing of a chapter. The Mother Road had given birth to legends, but now it seemed destined to fade into memory. Yet even in its decline, Route 66 retained a certain magic. Travelers who stayed loyal to it spoke of a quieter beauty, of driving stretches where the world seemed to stand still. They found a sense of solitude in the abandoned motels, the shuttered gas stations, and the faded billboards. For them, Route 66 was not dead, only sleeping. The decline of the Mother Road was painful for communities, businesses, and families who had depended on it. But its story was not finished. Although the official designation had ended, the legend of Route 66 was just beginning to grow in another form, one rooted in memory, nostalgia, and the determination of those who refused to let the road disappear entirely. Chapter 8: Preservation and Nostalgia. After the official decommissioning of Route 66 in 1985, many believed the Mother Road would simply fade into history. The signs came down, maps erased its number, and the Great American Highway was no longer recognized by the federal government. Yet something remarkable happened. Instead of vanishing, Route 66 found new life in the hearts of people who refused to forget. Local communities were often the first to act. Towns that had once thrived on the steady flow of travelers saw their businesses shuttered, their main streets grow quiet, and their neon lights go dark. But rather than surrender to decline, residents banded together. They formed preservation groups, historical societies, and associations dedicated to keeping the memory of the highway alive. Their goal was not only to save old buildings and signs, but also to preserve the stories of the road itself. By the late 1980s and into the 1990s, these efforts began to bear fruit. States designated sections of the old road as Historic Route 66, reinstalling signs that once again guided travelers along the forgotten path. Motels that had fallen into disrepair were repainted and reopened. Diners dusted off their booths and lit their neon signs once more. Roadside attractions, from giant statues to classic trading posts, were repaired and given new purpose as symbols of Americana. Tourism returned, fueled not by necessity, but by nostalgia. Travelers from around the world sought out Route 66 not because it was the fastest way to cross the country, but because it wasn't. The slower pace allowed them to experience the charm of small towns, the character of local diners, and the simple joy of the open road. Stories of the road began to spread internationally. European and Asian travelers in particular were captivated by the romance of Route 66. They came to drive it end to end, snapping photos of faded billboards, restored gas pumps, and the wide desert skies. For them, Route 66 represented something uniquely American, a distilled version of freedom, adventure, and the dream of the open highway. The preservation movement also inspired new festivals, car rallies, and community events. Classic cars once again lined the streets of towns that had nearly been forgotten. Local musicians played songs inspired by the road, while shopkeepers sold souvenirs that carried the Route 66 shield. The highway had shifted from being a practical route of commerce to being a living museum of American history and culture. The nostalgia for Route 66 was not just about old buildings or restored neon. It was about memory itself. Driving the road became a way to step back in time, to imagine what it felt like in the 1930s Dust Bowl, the 1940s convoys of war, or the neon glow of the 1950s. Every cracked stretch of pavement told a story, and every preserved sign whispered of journeys past. Although the highway had been officially decommissioned, its spirit endured. Thanks to the efforts of communities, preservationists, and devoted travelers, Route 66 did not disappear. It transformed into something greater than a highway. It became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in decline, there can be renewal, and that the stories of a road can live on as long as people are willing to remember them. Chapter 9. Route 66 in the New Millennium. As the new millennium unfolded, Route 66 no longer existed as an official highway. Yet it lived on more vibrantly than anyone might have imagined in 1985. What had once been dismissed as an obsolete road now carried an energy born of nostalgia, tourism, and worldwide fascination. The Mother Road had become a destination in its own right, a cultural landmark as recognizable as the Statue of Liberty or the Golden Gate Bridge. Travelers from across the globe arrived in the United States with a dream of driving Route 66. For many, the road represented freedom in its purest form. To rent a car in Chicago, follow the old road signs, and eventually reach the Pacific in Santa Monica became a kind of pilgrimage. Along the way, they discovered not just a road, but a living gallery of American culture. Communities along the route embraced this new identity. Towns that had once withered after the interstate bypassed them found hope in the steady trickle of tourists eager to experience the real America. Cafes reopened, museums dedicated to Route 66 history appeared, and motels repainted themselves in bright retro colors to capture the spirit of the 1950s. Events like Route 66 festivals and vintage car rallies drew visitors who wanted to immerse themselves in the atmosphere of the highway's golden years. International interest played a powerful role in this revival. Travelers from Europe, Japan, and Australia arrived with cameras, guidebooks, and a deep curiosity about the United States. To them, Route 66 was more than a road. It was a symbol of American identity. Wide landscapes, neon lights, diners with chrome stools, and the sense that anything was possible once the wheels started turning westward. The road also began to feature in films, documentaries, and even video games, ensuring that younger generations who had never seen the original highway still felt connected to its legend. Images of desert highways, glowing neon signs, and classic convertibles became shorthand for Americana. Route 66 had transcended geography. It was now a story, a myth, and a brand, recognized across the world. In the 2000s and 2010s, Preservation efforts continued to expand. Nonprofit groups, local governments, and enthusiasts worked together to protect what remained. Historic gas stations were restored as museums. Old diners were outfitted with jukeboxes and milkshake machines, evoking the mid-century experience. Even abandoned stretches of pavement were marked and maintained, not for traffic, but for memory. Perhaps the most remarkable transformation was the way Route 66 evolved into a shared experience across cultures. A German family could drive it alongside a Japanese tour group, each of them chasing the same dream. Strangers from different countries found themselves connected by the rhythm of the road, by the small towns that welcomed them, and by the feeling that they were part of something larger than themselves. By the time Route 66 entered the 21st century, it was clear that its story was not about decline after all. Instead, it was about rebirth. The road had shifted from being a means of travel to being a destination, a symbol, and a memory preserved by the people who loved it. Even today, when travelers set out on Route 66, they do not measure the journey in miles per hour. They measure it in experiences. A milkshake at a roadside diner, a photograph beside a weathered sign, a quiet sunset over the desert. The road carries them not only across the land but through time, connecting them to generations who came before. Route 66 in the new millennium is proof that legends do not fade. They adapt, they grow, and they continue to inspire. The Mother Road may no longer be marked on official maps, but it lives in the hearts of millions, each of them hearing the same quiet call: to set out, to explore, and to find themselves somewhere along the journey west. Chapter 10. The Road That Never Ends. When people speak of Route 66, they often say it is more than a road, and that is true. It is not simply a stretch of pavement running from one city to another. It is an idea, a memory, and a story that never truly comes to an end. Even though the official signs came down in 1985, the road continues to live in ways that cannot be measured in miles. It lives in the photographs of neon-lit motels, in the laughter of families leaning across diner booths, and in the smell of dust and gasoline on the desert air. It lives in postcards mailed from roadside trading posts, in the worn maps tucked into glove compartments, and in the faint tire tracks that still run across forgotten stretches of asphalt. The road never ends because every person who has traveled it carries a piece of it forward. For some, it was the memory of childhood vacations in the backseat of a family car, watching the world slide by in a blur of billboards and wide horizons. For others, it was the sound of music on a jukebox, the neon sign buzzing faintly in the warm summer night. For many, it was the sight of the ocean at Santa Monica after days or weeks of travel, proof that the long journey had brought them to the edge of the continent and the edge of a dream. Communities along Route 66 have kept that memory alive, not only by preserving landmarks, but by passing down their own stories. An elderly couple might recall the years they ran a small gas station, keeping travelers' cars alive on hot afternoons. A waitress might tell of the thousands of strangers she served, each one in a hurry, each one heading somewhere important. A motel owner might remember the way children ran to the pool, splashing away the fatigue of long miles while their parents checked in under the glow of a flickering sign. The road also never ends because it continues to inspire. Writers, musicians, and filmmakers still return to Route 66, drawing from its imagery to capture the essence of the American spirit. Songs are written, photographs are taken, and documentaries are filmed that remind us that the road is both real and symbolic. It is a stage where countless small human dramas have played out, each one part of a greater story. Think of the landscapes it crosses. The skyscrapers of Chicago, the rolling farmland of Illinois, the rivers of Missouri, the prairies of Oklahoma, the open skies of Texas, the mesas of New Mexico, the red rocks of Arizona, and the deserts of California. Each landscape feels like a chapter in a much larger book. To travel Route 66 is to read that book slowly, one page at a time, until you reach the final chapter on the shores of the Pacific Ocean. Yet even when you reach that ending, the story does not close. Travelers often say that when they finish Route 66, they feel compelled to go back, to drive it again, or to linger in the places they missed. In this way, the road resists finality. It invites return like a song you cannot help but play one more time. The road never ends, because it is woven into the identity of America itself. It represents migration, hope, hardship, leisure, and adventure. It has carried farmers fleeing drought, soldiers heading to war, families chasing vacations, and dreamers chasing sunsets. It has carried laughter and tears, triumph and despair, beginnings and endings. Few highways can claim to have touched so many lives in so many different ways. And perhaps most of all, Route 66 never ends, because it still calls out to those who have not yet traveled it. For every person who has driven its miles, there are countless others who dream of doing so one day. They picture themselves behind the wheel, tracing the line of the road across a map, feeling the freedom of the horizon unspooling before them. The call of the Mother Road is soft, but it is persistent, like a whisper on the wind that says, "Come and see. Come and drive. Come and be part of the story as you drift deeper into rest." You might imagine yourself setting out on that road. The sky is blue, the sun is warm, and the road stretches ahead unbroken. Each mile takes you farther from the noise of the day and closer to the quiet peace of night. In your mind, the journey never ends, because the road itself is endless. It lives on, mile after mile, memory after memory, forever waiting for the next traveler to come along. Chapter 11. The enduring symbol of Route 66. Route 66 was once a highway on a map, a practical path connecting Chicago to Los Angeles. Yet today, decades after its official removal from the U.S. highway system, it continues to live on as something greater. It has become a symbol, a myth, and a reflection of the American story. Few roads anywhere in the world have carried such meaning, and fewer still have managed to endure long after their practical use has ended. The enduring power of Route 66 lies first in its universality. To Americans, it represents freedom, mobility, and possibility. To travelers from abroad, it represents the essence of the United States itself. They come not just to drive the road, but to experience what they imagine America to be. Wide skies, small towns, neon lights, and a sense of unbounded horizons. The Mother Road has become a cultural shorthand, a way of saying, "This is America," without needing another word. Its endurance is also rooted in memory. Generations grew up with Route 66 as part of their lives, whether through childhood vacations, cross-country moves, or the songs and television shows that celebrated it. Those memories, passed down through families, keep the road alive. A grandparent might tell a story of traveling west in the 1950s, and a grandchild, years later, may decide to retrace that journey, linking past to present. memory carried forward, becomes tradition. But symbols survive not only because of nostalgia. They endure because they stand for something bigger than themselves. Route 66 stands for resilience. It survived the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, the war years, and the rise and fall of small-town America. Even when it was bypassed and decommissioned, it refused to vanish completely. Communities along the route fought to preserve it, and in doing so, they preserved a symbol of hope. Another reason Route 66 endures is its ability to adapt. At first, it was a road of migration, then a road of leisure, later a road of myth, and now a road of memory. Each generation has found its own meaning in the highway. Migrants saw survival, families saw vacation, musicians saw inspiration, and today's travelers see a living connection to history. The road shifts its meaning while keeping its essence, which is why it continues to matter. The symbol of Route 66 is strengthened by the stories it tells about America itself. The highway reflects the nation's triumphs and struggles. It speaks of opportunity, but also of hardship. It speaks of movement forward, but also of communities left behind. It is both celebration and cautionary tale, joy and melancholy. Like the United States, it is full of contradictions, yet those contradictions are part of its strength. Route 66 also endures because of its imagery. Few symbols are as visually rich. The curved neon signs, the desert highways stretching to the horizon, the small diners with chrome stools, the weathered billboards promising cold soda, all of these images carry with them an emotional pull. They remind us of a time when the road itself was the adventure. In art, photography, film, and music, Route 66 appears again and again, proof that its imagery never fades. Perhaps the greatest reason Route 66 endures is that it represents the dream of the open road. The idea that you can set out with little more than a car, a map, and a sense of direction, and discover the country for yourself. The freedom to stop where you please, to meet new people and to see new landscapes. The dream of movement without limits is at the heart of the American imagination, and Route 66 embodies it perfectly. As we reflect on the endurance of the Mother Road, it is worth remembering that symbols survive because people believe in them. Route 66 would be nothing more than cracked pavement if not for the people who continue to see it as meaningful. Travelers who drive it, preservationists who restore it, musicians who sing about it, filmmakers who capture it. All of them add another thread to the fabric of its story. The road endures because people want it to endure. In the quiet of night, when the world slows down and the mind begins to drift, Route 66 becomes more than a physical place. It becomes a feeling. The hum of tires on pavement, the glow of a neon sign, the taste of coffee at a roadside diner. It becomes a symbol of movement, of freedom, and of possibility. And as long as those feelings matter, the road will never truly disappear. The enduring symbol of Route 66 is not only about the past. It is also about the present and the future. It shows us that even when something fades from official maps, it can continue to live in the imagination. It reminds us that roads are not only built of concrete and paint, but of stories and dreams. And it reassures us that as long as people keep telling those stories, the road will always be there, stretching quietly toward the horizon, waiting for the next traveler to come along. Chapter 12. Stories from the Road. Every great road is more than pavement and signs. What makes a road legendary are the people who travel it, the lives that unfold along its shoulders, and the stories that linger long after the engines go quiet. Route 66 is a highway filled with such stories. They are stories of joy and hardship, of discovery and loss, of chance encounters and lifelong memories. Together, they form a tapestry that stretches as wide as the country itself. One story is of the families who left the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. We often picture them as anonymous migrants, but each had a name, a face, and a dream. A father who piled mattresses on top of an old truck, hoping to find work in California. A mother who cooked beans in a tin pot by the roadside, determined to feed her children no matter how little there was. Children who stared out across endless miles of desert, too young to understand the hardship, but old enough to feel its weight. Their stories may have been captured by John Steinbeck, but countless others were never written down. Yet the road remembers. Another story belongs to the soldiers of World War II. Many of them traveled Route 66 on their way to training bases in the Southwest. Imagine the convoys of olive green trucks, headlights cutting through the dark as they rolled toward deserts where recruits would drill under the scorching sun. Young men who had never left their hometowns suddenly found themselves in Arizona or New Mexico, watching the horizon glow red at dawn. For them, Route 66 was the beginning of a journey that might carry them across oceans, into battles that would change their lives forever. Then there are the stories of the road's golden age in the 1950s. Families on summer vacations with coolers packed in the trunk and children arguing in the back seat over who got the window. A father pulling into a gas station where an attendant in a crisp uniform filled the tank, checked the oil, and cleaned the windshield, all with a smile. A mother jotting postcards at a diner booth, writing to relatives back home. Wish you were here. Route 66 is everything they say it is. These small, ordinary moments are what gave the highway its magic. The road also carries stories of romance. Countless couples met along Route 66, whether at a roadside cafe, a county fair, or a dusty motel parking lot. Some were fleeting, little more than glances exchanged across a jukebox. Others lasted a lifetime, marriages that began with a chance encounter on the Mother Road. For many, the highway was not just a path to a destination, but a backdrop to the unfolding of love. There are stories, too, of hardship and heartbreak. Towns that faded when the interstate bypassed them. Businesses that closed their doors after decades of service. Families who moved away, leaving behind motels with broken signs and diners with empty stools. These stories are quieter, but they matter as much as the joyful ones. They remind us that Route 66 is not only about adventure, but also about change, loss, and the passage of time. Travelers today still add their own chapters to the story. A motorcyclist from Germany riding the road from Chicago to Santa Monica, feeling the thrill of each mile. A couple from Japan stopping to photograph every vintage sign they pass. A family from Australia laughing together in a diner, trying root beer floats for the first time. The road has become international, its stories woven with voices from around the world, each one adding to the legend. Some stories lean into myth, tales of haunted motels, ghost lights in the desert, or travelers who vanished without explanation. Route 66 has its share of folklore, whispered at campfires or traded in roadside bars. Whether true or not, these stories add a layer of mystery to the road, making it feel alive, as if it holds secrets known only to those who travel it under the cover of night. Other stories are humorous. Travelers who ran out of gas in the middle of nowhere and had to push their car for miles. Families who argued over maps, taking wrong turns that led them to unexpected adventures. Musicians who broke down on the way to gigs, only to play impromptu shows in small-town bars. These lighthearted moments remind us that even mistakes can become treasured memories. What makes all of these stories endure is not their grandeur, but their humanity. They are the stories of ordinary people, farmers, soldiers, travelers, waitresses, gas station attendants, whose lives brushed against the highway for a moment and left a mark. Each one adds a thread to the fabric of Route 66, a fabric that continues to grow with every traveler who sets out upon it. As you listen now, perhaps you can imagine yourself among them. Driving west with the windows down, the air warm against your face, stopping at a neon-lit diner where the jukebox hums softly in the corner, meeting strangers who feel like friends, if only for an evening, watching the sun sink into the horizon as the road carries you farther into the unknown. In that moment, you become part of the story too. The stories of Route 66 are endless. They stretch across time from the 1920s to today, from the Dust Bowl migrants to international tourists. Each one is unique, yet together they form something greater, a living memory, a collective tale that continues to unfold. And as long as people keep driving the road, keep stopping in its towns, keep sharing their experiences, the stories will never stop. So as the night deepens and your mind drifts, let these stories guide you into rest. The laughter, the music, the echoes of engines on a summer night. The road stretches on, carrying the stories of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And though you may close your eyes, the stories of Route 66 continue, rolling ever forward. A gentle reminder that the Mother Road never truly ends. Chapter 13, The Journey's End. Route 66 is often called the Mother Road, but maybe it's better understood as a companion. It's carried millions of travelers westward, not only across landscapes, but across moments of their lives. From hardship and migration, to leisure and discovery, to memory and nostalgia, it's been more than pavement. It's been a story, one that continues to unfold every time someone sets out upon it. As we reach the end of this journey together, take a moment to reflect on what Route 66 represents. Its resilience in the face of difficulty, its joy in the smallest details, like a neon sign glowing in the night, or the laughter of children in the back seat of a car. Its freedom, possibility, and the open horizon that always lies just ahead. Though the road was officially decommissioned decades ago, its story continues. It lives in the towns that keep its memory alive, in the travelers who seek it out, and in the songs, films, and stories that celebrate it. In this way, Route 66 is not only a part of America's past, but also a part of its present and its future. Thank you for joining me on this quiet journey through the history of the road. If you found comfort here, if this story helped you relax, please take a moment to like this video. It helps more than you might realize, especially with the way the YouTube algorithm decides what to share with others. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, on Route 66 and other chapters of American history, consider subscribing. I'll be posting new videos every week, so you'll always have another story waiting for you at bedtime. Now, settle in, knowing the journey is complete. The Mother Road stretches on in memory, in imagination, and in the quiet promise of tomorrow. Sleep well, and may your dreams carry you gently down the road that never truly ends. And if you're still awake, that's all right too. Let your breathing slow. Let your body rest. And know that the next story will be here waiting for you soon.